Monday's Starlink launch from Cape Canaveral resumes constellation expansion and tests direct-to-cell backhaul at scale. This is SpaceX Daily, episode 62. A Falcon 9 is scheduled to lift off from Cape Canaveral on Monday, carrying the next batch of Starlink satellites. The mission returns the constellation to its regular cadence after recent pauses. Direct-to-cell hardware on the satellites will continue testing with partner carriers. The launch supports ongoing subscriber growth targets for residential and maritime users. Watch for post-flight confirmation of laser link performance between the new satellites and the existing shell. This flight continues the cadence tracked yesterday and directly addresses the open question of direct-to-cell ramp speed. SpaceX is preparing a dedicated manufacturing site in Bastrop County for orbital data center satellites. The facility will produce satellites equipped with onboard compute nodes and high-bandwidth laser links. These satellites are intended to host AI inference workloads in low Earth orbit. Construction timelines and power delivery hardware details remain under local permitting review. The project directly ties Starlink production lines to XAI compute demand. Site selection leverages existing Bastrop logistics already supporting Starlink hardware. Worth keeping an eye on is an analyst assessment that assigns only a 7% probability to near-term operational status for the proposed AI satellites and orbital data centers. The low odds reflect unresolved questions around continuous power generation, thermal rejection, and radiation hardening for GPU racks. Resolution would require demonstrated hardware flights and sustained on-orbit performance data. From an engineering standpoint, the orbital placement moves the power and cooling problem from terrestrial substations to solar arrays and radiative panels. The raw material floor for a GPU rack is the silicon, copper, and aluminum inside the chips and boards. Everything else multiplies cost through launch mass, radiation shielding, and thermal rejection. Placing inference nodes in orbit collapses the idiot index on terrestrial power delivery, because sunlight is continuous above the atmosphere and waste heat radiates directly to space rather than requiring chillers or cooling towers. Starlink's existing laser link architecture already supplies the interconnect fabric, so the incremental engineering task is packaging the compute nodes to survive launch loads and thermal cycling while maintaining the same pointing accuracy used for inter-satellite data. The Gigasat Factory therefore focuses on satellite bus commonality with current Starlink production rather than new silicon processes. This approach reuses the same solar array and radiator designs already qualified for the communications constellation, reducing the number of new qualification campaigns required. The main remaining variable is the thermal interface between the GPU cold plates and the satellite's radiative surfaces, which must reject heat across the full range of beta angles encountered in low Earth orbit. SpaceX is advancing a $17 billion Texas site focused on power infrastructure for chip fabrication tied to AI workloads. The plan emphasizes on-site gas turbines and grid upgrades over silicon process nodes. Turbine capacity will supply the steady baseload required for continuous AI training clusters. Site selection aligns with existing Starbase logistics and transmission corridors. Next milestones include turbine procurement contracts and interconnection studies. The emphasis on turbines reflects the priority of reliable megawatt-scale delivery ahead of any specific chip process choice. SpaceX and Italian officials are negotiating a $1.6 billion contract for nationwide Starlink coverage. The agreement would expand maritime and aviation terminals alongside residential service. Terms include dedicated spectrum access and ground station siting. The deal builds on existing European regulatory approvals for the constellation. Final signatures are expected after technical reviews conclude this quarter. The contract would add Italy as a major government customer for both commercial and potential Starshield adjacent services. The Bastrop facility will integrate compute nodes directly into satellite buses already in production for Starlink. Laser terminals will handle both inter-satellite routing and downlink of inference results. Local permitting covers both the factory footprint and the high-voltage feed required for final integration and test. The project positions Bastrop as the manufacturing node linking terrestrial XAI clusters to orbital capacity. Negotiations cover both commercial broadband and potential national security terminal allocations. Ground station locations under discussion include sites already evaluated for European laser link gateways. The $1.6 billion figure encompasses hardware, spectrum licensing, and multi-year service commitments. Technical reviews focus on interference mitigation with existing Italian terrestrial networks. XAI released Grok Build v1.0 with redesigned interface elements for agent workflows. The update adds improved code generation panes and real-time model switching. Developers can now route tasks between Grok instances and external tools inside the same session. The release targets Cursor and other IDE integrations. Rollout is live on web and desktop clients. The changes focus on reducing context switching time during multi-step engineering tasks. SitePoint compared Cursor, Claude Code, and Windsurf on code completion speed and agent reliability. Cursor led in multi-file refactoring tasks when paired with Grok models. The review measured token throughput and context window handling across identical prompts. Claude Code showed stronger single-file reasoning in some benchmarks. Windsurf trailed on large repository navigation. The results highlight how Grok integration affects real-world developer throughput inside the Cursor environment. Normand Ranger slowed to under 1 knot while towing Starship 40 toward Dampier, prompting speculation about tow line or weather issues. Observers note the heavy lift vessel Dongbang Giant departed India in late July and could reach the area soon. Community members are tracking whether the vessel will be tasked with returning the vehicle to Starbase. Reddit users asked whether Starship remains the only planned vehicle capable of carrying more than 4 crew to low Earth orbit or the Moon once human-rated. Discussion centered on Orion and New Glenn manifest limits versus Starship's planned pressurized volume. No competing architecture with comparable crew capacity has entered detailed design yet. On the AI front, Grok Build v1.0 introduces UI changes that streamline agent handoff between models inside Cursor sessions. The update supports faster iteration on SpaceX internal simulation scripts. The Gigasat Factory in Bastrop will build satellites carrying AI inference hardware and laser terminals for orbital compute clusters. Power and thermal systems are the primary design drivers. Cursor's 2026 comparison shows Grok integration leading multi-file tasks, expanding the distribution path for XAI models among SpaceX-adjacent developers. That's the day at SpaceX. That's a wrap. S&P CX is trading at $114.92, up 0.4%. If you're new here, subscribe and this briefing finds you every day. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets, each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. Unintended consequences. True stories of good intentions that backfired. Find every show free at neranetwork.com. Want the written briefing with source links? Each show keeps a summaries page on neranetwork.com, scannable, dated, and free. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.